From the International School at Tel Aviv University, you're listening to Rihla, the podcast of the MA in Middle Eastern Studies program. Rihla is the Arabic word for travelogue. The Rihla Podcast brings you stories of our students' journeys as they live and study in Tel Aviv and travel throughout Israel and the wider Middle East.
Welcome to a new episode of Rihla Podcast. My name is Valerie Strassmann. I'm going to talk with John Cappello, graduate student in the MAMES program of Tel Aviv University.
Good evening. I'm John Cappello. I've been in Tel Aviv, Israel for now 4.5 years and started the MAMES program a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now. I'm from New York originally, and I just finished working in the Air Force in Tel Aviv, at the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, and remain here working.
So first of all, thank you for inviting me to your home. I remember the last time I was here, we were standing at the balcony looking at the skyline of Tel Aviv, and we saw the rockets coming in. How did this experience, the summer of 2014, shape you?
So you know what my profession is, so I look at that situation a little bit differently, because professionally I work in the field of security and defense. And actually what I do right now is in the field of missile defense. So what I saw was a great success in the systems that we work with the Israelis very closely on. And I work for the Missile Defense Agency assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, Israel. And we are interlocutors. I work as a liaison with the Israeli Missile Defense Organization, IMDO. And we work together on a number of different programs. If you do some Google searches, I'm sure you could find out all the different systems that we work together on. And it's a very close relationship because it's a very important relationship, given the threats that unfortunately the Israelis face on a daily basis.
Just out of curiosity, so you're also working with the Iron Dome?
That is one of the systems that the Israelis are producing with the assistance from the United States. That's correct, yes.
Maybe people who are not in this field have very romantic ideas about your kind of work, but I guess it's also a lot of meeting people, talking with people, exchanging information. Is that like the main part of your work?
Well, I started my time here as the Air Force attaché assigned to the United States Embassy, and a large portion of the work is building relationships with the host country military. That's correct, and it runs the gamut, a wide gamut. My responsibilities and portfolio ran the gamut of all Air Force issues, which included things that flew, missiles, UAVs, strategic relationships. So we spend a lot of time working with our counterparts in the Ministry of Defense, in the Israeli Air Force, in my case, across a wide spectrum. So yes, there's a lot of meetings involved, but it's always something different. So that's what makes it very interesting, because as you're building a relationship, it's always very dynamic. And as you can imagine, the relationship between the United States and Israel is a very positive and growing one, and is quite dynamic.
So meeting people is, I guess, not even enough. You also need to have the necessary background knowledge. You have to have insight into the field. What made you qualified for the job? Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
So I started my Air Force career as a pilot, but I did my undergraduate work in the field of international relations and political science. I was focused on actually East Europe and the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union was still together at the time. Most of my early career was spent flying, most of that time in the United States, deployed to different locations overseas. But as I progressed in my career, I wanted very much to continue to work in the international arena, in international affairs, if you will. So I went to school while I was flying in Kansas. I did my first graduate degree, master's degree, in international relations there. Subsequently went to continue to fly, and then went to another assignment in Stuttgart, Germany. Worked at the European Command Headquarters, where I did plans and strategy for Southeast Europe. So spent a lot of time in the Balkans. I worked with five or six different embassies in that region, and I decided that I actually wanted to try to be stationed in an embassy and spend really be immersed and spend time. And as it turned out, I had the opportunity to do that in Serbia. So I spent about 3 years in Serbia, working as the Air Force Attaché and Defense Attaché there. And then I had the opportunity to come here. So I had not studied the Middle East in depth or formally before coming here. Most of my time was spent studying Eastern Europe and the Balkans. So when I came here, I decided that it was important to build that foundation and build a basis, and that's why I looked at Tel Aviv University for the opportunity to do a program there. The Middle East Studies program provided me an opportunity to build a foundation, studying history as it is interdisciplinary. You know, studying the history, studying the culture, the language, and I thought that was a good match and provided me a good foundation for continued work here in the region.
That sounds pretty intense, working, having this kind of responsibility, and studying. How do you combine it?
So it is difficult, actually. I thought initially it wouldn't be that difficult, but I found that it has been. So I was very lucky to have had the opportunity the first semester to take a kind of a sabbatical, and I took almost 3 months off and spent the whole first semester as a full-time student. So that really provided me the groundwork and the basis to continue. But like everything, it's how much you put into it. I found that it's been a good opportunity to focus on a lot of regional issues, on history, and some topics that I'm very interested in. So where it's been very difficult, it's still been a good opportunity to develop myself and my expertise and experience in the region.
So you're saying that you have benefited from the program, also in regard to your work.
I have, yes, for sure, I have. The first 3 years that I was here, it was a very intense 3 years. Again, the relationship between the United States and Israel is a very in-depth one, and as you can imagine, as you just watch the news, we have visits after visit after visitor, and it's a very, very intense 3 years, from one activity to the next crisis to the next issue. And I didn't have an opportunity to really sit down and absorb what I had experienced during those first 3 years. And so this spending time in school, sitting and thinking and talking to people and writing and reading has given me the opportunity to absorb a lot of what I had previously experienced, and hopefully will now be able to use that again in the future. I want to continue working in policy in the region, and I hope that I'll be able to do that with this basis.
Yeah, I can confirm that John is really an amazing tour guide. I remember that we did a road trip to the south, and we had the opportunity to look into Gaza from a hill.
Well, yeah, I thought that was important. As you said, opening the interview, we sat here in Tel Aviv on the balcony watching this happen as if we were detached from the situation. And I think it's important to put it into context, and we were able to do that, taking a trip south and seeing outside the Tel Aviv bubble what's really happening, and discussing it and putting it into some sort of context. So I thought that was a good opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Rihla Podcast. We have more episodes coming out soon, so stay tuned. For more information on the MA in Middle Eastern Studies program and how to apply, visit mames-israel.org. That's MAMES-Israel.org.